Yo, what's up guys, welcome to the Gridiron Genius. In today's video, I'm going to be going over my top 15 tight ends in fantasy football. I've already went over my QB, running back, and wide receiver rankings, so go check those out if you want to. And make sure that you stay subscribed because the season's right around the corner. But this list is going to be a little shorter just because there's not as many elite tight ends as there are other positions. But I'll give you guys a second to look at the list, but let's just jump right into the S tier. And the first guy I have in the S tier is Brock Bowers. He finishes as tight end 1 last year, and he now gets a QB upgrade in Geno Smith. Obviously, the Raiders did take Ashton Jeanty in the draft, so that could take away from Bowers a little bit. The Raiders have already came out and said that they're going to be a little more run-heavy this year, and that obviously makes sense. But Brock just gets so many targets on these short little gains, so he'll still be an amazing tight end. I still expect him to finish in the top 3. He was doing all that while being a rookie last year, and really the sky's the limit for this guy's career. I sadly mostly don't draft him just because his value is a little too high for me to draft, but I definitely do see the upside, and I'm a big fan of him, along with Trey McBride. McBride could easily finish as a tight end 1 too. In 2022, he only had 2 passing touchdowns in the whole entire year and 1 rushing touchdown, and I obviously expect him to go up in that sense. I'm interested to see how that Cardinals offense will be. I know Kyler will still love to throw to this guy. If Kyler really can have a good season this year and Marvin Harrison Jr. can break out, that will obviously benefit Trey McBride. It has been pretty cool to see though, because every single year that Trey's been in the NFL, he's gotten a lot better. And that wraps up the S tier, and that brings us into the A tier. And for the A tier, I only have one guy, and that guy is George Kittle. I still think that he has a chance to finish as a tight end 1. Now that Debo's gone, Ayuk's injured, and Jennings is banged up, that will open up a good amount of targets for Kittle and Pearsall, so I expect him to step it up this year. And the 49ers have the easiest schedule, so I'm expecting Kittle to have a pretty good year. He obviously is aging, being 31, but I don't see him slowing down anytime soon. But that wraps up the A tier and brings us into the B tier. And this is where guys could definitely flip-flop around rankings. I don't really see these guys finishing as tight end 1s anymore, but I still do think that they're solid tight end options. And the first option is Sam Laporta. He obviously disappointed a little bit from last year. He finished as a tight end 8, and we expected a top 3 finish, and that didn't happen. There is a lot of target competition in that Lions offense, and they also do have that split backfield with Montgomery and Gibbs, so that definitely can take away from Sam Laporta's ceiling, but Goff definitely will target Sam Laporta. I'm just interested to see how this Lions offense will be without Ben Johnson. The Lions are going to definitely be in some tough games this year, so Sam definitely will be utilized. And that brings us into TJ Hawkinson. He finished as a tight end 34 last year, but that was obviously because he started off the season with an injury. This is JJ McCarthy's first full year starting, so he's going to need a safety blanket, and TJ Hawkinson's one of the best tight ends. Especially these first few weeks with Addison being suspended, I expect Hawkinson to play a big role in this offense. They're probably going to be passing the ball a lot. I know they still do have Aaron Jones and they just brought in Jordan Mason, but I don't think that they're going to have the opportunity to run very much, just because they're going to be in pretty tough games too, similar to the Lions. I'm very excited to see how the NFC North will shake out, and that really opens up the ceiling for TJ Hawkinson. And that brings us into Mark Andrews. In 2024, he really had a weird year. He finished as a tight end 6 last year and struggled really early on. We obviously see him have that pretty bad job against the Bills. I don't know necessarily if he's going to finish with 11 touchdowns, and I have a feeling this season's going to be the exact opposite of last year. He starts off pretty high and then goes pretty cold, just because the other tight end there in Isaiah Likely is dealing with an injury. I know the Ravens have come out and said they want to use Likely more, so that will take away from Andrews, but I definitely am a big fan of him when Likely's out, and I feel like he's going to want to get revenge for that drop. But that brings us into the last guy of the B tier, Travis Kelce. He finished as a tight end 5, and similar to Andrews, because Rashid Rice is suspended for the first 6 weeks, the other Chiefs players will need to step it up. Obviously, he also is getting pretty old. This is probably one of his last seasons in the NFL. Kelce just gets a lot of big plays in the middle of the field. Obviously, he's not a Brock Bowers that will get 7-8 targets a game, but when he gets open, he'll get you like a solid 20 yards each catch. I also expect him to get a few more touchdowns in this year, because he only had 3 last year, but Mahomes will find a way to include his best friend in the offense no matter what. So I think that Kelce's still pretty solid. And that wraps up the B tier and brings us onto the C tier. In the C tier, these are guys I like a lot. A lot of these guys are more value options, but they're still not bad. And the first guy I have on this list is David Njoku. I'm especially a fan of this guy when Joe Flacco is under center. The only thing that knocks him down is just I don't know who's going to be that QB each and every week. Obviously, I think they're going to rotate between the QBs just because you don't have all those QBs not to use them. David Njoku is really utilized in the red zone, which I'm a big fan of. In week 1, I would probably rather start Njoku over someone like Hawkinson. I know the Browns have said that they also want to use their other tight end a little more, so that could take away a little bit from David, but he's still one of their best players on the offense, so I think that David's a great value option. And that brings us into Tyler Warren, who's the first rookie on this list. If Daniel Jones can remain the starter, I expect a big year out of Tyler Warren. Obviously, there are other receivers on that team, like Michael Pittman and Josh Downs, but in the preseason, Warren was getting so many first-read options, which is obviously a good sign when you're the first guy they look at to throw. I don't think he's going to have a tight end 1 finish last year like Brock Bowers did, but I definitely could see him finishing top 5. To me, coming out of college, he was the best tight end out of that class, but you definitely could have made a case for this guy too, Colston Loveland, because he was a tight end 1 in the draft. To me, the only reason I have him below Warren is that Bears wide receiver room is actually so crowded. They have DJ Moore, Rome Odunze, Luther Burton, and now Loveland, so it's really hard to say he's going to be the alpha of the offense with all those guys there. I definitely do expect this Bears offense to be much improved from last year, and Loveland could be used in the red zone, but he still has Cole Kmet there too, so there is a little tight end competition. I like Loveland a lot as a dynasty play, but in redraft, I'm mostly not taking him, because I'd probably rather just have Warren, who's just a little more expensive. But that brings us into Tucker Kraft, who was a tight end 10 last year, but he's already been shown to be Jordan Love's safety blanket. If Jordan Love can really tone back the interceptions, I expect Kraft to have an amazing season. But it is being projected, though, he will have a little bit of touchdown regression. Obviously, the big news of Micah Parsons being traded there will definitely make the Packers a better team. And that could mean the ball's going to be in Jordan Love's hands a lot more times. And that definitely could benefit Kraft. But we all know that wide receiver room is very crowded, especially now with rookie Matthew Golden. But Kraft is overall a pretty consistent tight end. And that takes us into the last guy of the C tier. He was a tight end 33 last year, and it feels like almost every year he's battling an injury. If he can stay healthy, I definitely am a big fan of his value in fantasy. Now that he's a member of the Broncos and no longer the Jaguars, and now under Sean Payton, I'm really excited to see how they're going to utilize him. I know they've already come out and said that he's going to play a joker role in the offense, so he could get some like design runs, line up in the slot. I'm really excited to see how they're going to use him. Ingram, however, has never had a 1,000-yard season, so I'm excited to see if he's going to get that this year. I obviously am a pretty big fan of this Broncos offense, along with how Sean Payton's been talking about Ingram. If Bo Nix can play how he did the second half of the season, I expect Ingram to have a pretty good year. But that wraps up the C tier and takes us into the D tier. These guys are a little more 50-50. They could have a great year, or they could be a little disappointing. And that takes us into the first guy, Dalton Kincaid. A lot of people forget how young he is. He's only 25 years old. Obviously, he was a little disappointing last year, but he was injured. I expect him definitely to have a better year than last year, as he was a tight end 30 last year. In 2023, he was Josh Allen's favorite target. And if the Bills want to stay competitive, they need someone to step up in this offense. And I feel like that definitely could be Kincaid. There really is no clear alpha in that offense. So I think Kincaid could play a big role. And that leads us into Dallas Goedert. He was a tight end 27 last year, and I expect him to be way better than that. I just like everyone in this Eagles passing offense a lot more this year than last year. I don't think Saquon's going to be able to run as much as he did, so it's going to benefit the passing offense. Guys like A.J. Brown, Smith, and Goddard, I expect to have pretty big years. In previous years, Goddard's been a pretty reliable tight end, and I expect that to carry over this year. He only finished last year with 2 touchdowns, and I definitely think he's going to get more than 2 this year. But that brings us into the last tight end of the list. I have Jake Ferguson. Obviously, last year he was disappointing, but that's because Dak was injured. He was a tight end 25, but in 2023, when Dak was healthy, he was number 1 for tight ends in red zone usage. Obviously, now they do have a little more target competition there, with George Pickens now in the passing offense. But the running backs there in Dallas are not very good, so I expect Ferguson to play a pretty big role in that passing offense. I don't know how competitive the Cowboys are really going to be this year, but if they're trying to win games, they're going to need to pass. But yeah, I mean, that wraps up the list, guys. This is a pretty short one. I just wanted to get this out before the season. Let me know what you guys think of the list, along with who is your tight end 1 going into 2025. But yeah, thanks for watching.